Well, there's a rather extended look at the delightful sprawl of residential splendor that is Pinnacle Point, about 10 minutes or so down the road from the CBD of Mossel Bay, and just over half an hour from George International Airport. And that is where I find myself this Monday, not just because it's a lovely place to do a show from, but because this is the home of the final of the Vodacom Origins of Golf tournament. So why are we at a golf tournament for a wine show? Well, it is a golf tournament, a golf series that has got a wine partner, a very proud wine partner, and one that's been part of this series for some time now. In fact, a wine partner that does rather a lot with golf as a whole. The brand is Cape of Good Hope, part of the Anthony Rupert stable, and we'll be chatting both here and via our digital link to a couple of guests as we have a look at a range that I think has come on very nicely indeed since its launch, added a West Coast heartbeat to the Anthony Rupert family, and has given some really cool interpretations of a range of different grapes, all of which we will hear about through the course of today's show. So in just a moment, the broad-shouldered figure of Gareth Robertson, who you might remember from not that long ago, joining us on the show in Scotland. And we will also be joined by Mark, the winemaker, talking us through exactly what makes this wine and the terroir from which it comes quite so special. Before we do that, though, let's jump into some news from the last few days from the world of wine. Well, let's start with an upcoming event, the infamous Gareth Robertson and her Franche Cup Classique and Champagne Festival, presented by Sunland Private Wealth. This is going to be the first weekend in December, an event that was going to happen and then got cancelled by COVID, got put away again last year and now back. It's a garden party style event. It happens on the monument. You basically drive through the middle of Franschhoek, and when you hit the T-junction at the end, you are at the party. And what a party it will be. You can see there some bottles of Bubbles Ferreira's finest. Graham Beck will be one of the headline acts at an event that tends to sell out very quickly indeed. It's 450 Rand a ticket. 400 Rand is an early bird special that will not last very long. And this is an opportunity to compare, contrast, and enjoy some of South Africa's finest bubbles, as well as the stuff the French are trying to make. They, of course, can't call their stuff Cup Classique, so they have to call it champagne instead. And that will be happening first weekend in December. I highly recommend this. I've had a lot of fun at all of Dariel's events, and you will as well, should you make it along. So look forward to that. Put that into the diary. Then a new addition from the Lamotte stable as of last year. It's now in its second iteration, the Vin de Joie, which is the Lamotte Rosé. Edmund, the winemaker, bought this out. I think it was his birthday when we did this last year. We had quite a celebration. And it's added to a group of wines that have taken rosé into wonderful new territory in South Africa. Long gone are the electric pink, heavily sugared styles of rosé that dominated for so long. Instead, wines made with elegance, wines made sparingly, wines that take the best of the character of wine, let that fruit rather than sugar override the end result. And this is the second vintage. If memory serves, it's a touch over 100 Rand a bottle, and is going to serve you very well as summer starts to descend upon South Africa. Last year's was good. This one, no different. And at the weekend, it was a good weekend. This was the Pick and Pay Wine and Food Festival at the Wanderers. It lashed down with rain several times on Saturday. That did not stop more than 2,000 people from gathering, from celebrating, from having a terrific time tasting wine from right across South Africa and tasting an eclectic range from right up the west coast, down into the heart of Stellenbosch, Constantia, up along the Hemelanada, and everywhere in between. And it was a great opportunity for people to try wine that they like, but also step outside their comfort zone. And that was one of the fascinating parts, overhearing people umming and ahhing, well, I've never tried that before. Should I give it a go? And hopefully a few eyes open to some different wines, some different styles, some different varieties, and all complemented by a great range of food. Chef Chart and Colleen Schruter doing the tasting room with its food and wine pairings. Just a great couple of days. Thanks to the Pick and Pay team for a lovely event. There'll be more of those next year. So keep an eye out for them if you missed them, all over South Africa, and a wonderful, wonderful couple of days out at the Wanderers. And that brings us to Pinnacle Point. And the rather good-looking gentleman beside me is no stranger to the show, Gareth Robertson. Welcome. This is one of these times when our mates just really don't believe that we do real work, because here we are on a Monday, and we are sitting amazing golf course ahead of a terrific weekend, drinking some great wine. It's not a bad way to kick off the week.
That's a fantastic way to kick off the week, Dan. And yeah, we definitely will be doing some work. We've got some amazing wines to try during the course of this week. And obviously in the evening functions, the guys playing in the tournament will be able to taste them. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Now, it's nothing new, this link between wine and golf. There are a number of golfers. I think of Ernie Els with his range. Louis Oosthuizen's got his range. Greg Norman, I'm not sure if we're allowed to mention him anymore. He had his range. The Shark wines. David Frost did some wine. Jack Nicklaus, Gary Player. There are lots of guys who had it. There has been for many, many years quite a natural link between golf and wine.
Yeah, I think so. The Rupert family have been invested in golf for many, many years, and Mr. Rupert has always liked to support. And so, yeah, I think a lot of our wines that we served in a lot of the top golf courses around South Africa, and Cape of Good Hope is one of those ranges. We had the Cape of Good Hope series with the amateurs, and that played at Leopard Creek. So yeah, the Rupert family have invested a lot in it, and it's some of our core markets. So it's great to be here and supporting Vodacom on this.
All right. Well, it is the culmination of this series. It's been played out across South Africa, the Vodacom Origins of Golf. I've been working on the event for about 15 years now, which makes me feel terribly old. This one's really special, though, because it is the final, and it's got everybody here to not just play some golf on a great course, but also to sample some wine from a range, I think, even by the Rupert standards. You've had some great stories over the years, the runaway success of Classique and building up the Optima brand. You've done some really cool stuff, but this Cape of Good Hope series, which is still relatively young, it seems to have gone a long way and made a real impact in a short space of time.
Yeah, it's the brainchild of Johan Rupert. Basically, it really started about trying to be doing site-specific wines, and really about focusing on old vineyards. So the range, our first wines that we released were in 2011. And basically, he sent Rosa Kruger, who's obviously a stalwart and first lady to be knighted with that award recently in the Decanter, and Evan Sadi. And they took about 3 to 4 years to go out into these various farmers and find these old vineyards. He kept a couple of vineyards that he makes his old vineyard Rex farm, and we kept some vineyards. And then when we launched the brand, we actually made all those the database available for people, so a lot like butchers found from there, and so it's been a great sort of start, and how the Ruperts give back, and so the brand is still relatively young, and it's all about site specific. So some of them from our own vineyards in the Swartland, and then Elandskloof, and then the Van Lille Shannon is up in the Skierfberg, and then we've got the Basson Pinotage, and then also the Lang Semi also up on the Skierfberg. So yeah, a lot of different sites, but yeah, a lot of amazing wines that have been produced on that.
Let's just touch for a second on that sharing of knowledge and bringing other people in, because that's not something that happens everywhere in the world. Often wine knowledge is quite closely guarded. It's mine. I'm not telling you what I'm doing, getting so right. And yet part of what you're doing goes beyond just your range, it's bringing other people in and growing the industry as a whole.
Yeah, so I think that's with the old vine project is definitely one of those things to try and preserve old vineyards. And it was really nice of getting Evan and then some of the other guys in, because there wasn't this database of old vineyards. Literally was going out and chatting to them, Chris or whatever, and saying, no, there's an old patch there, and these guys finding it. And we had about 70 vineyards right in the beginning. We only kept 3 of them, and Evan kept a couple. And we've really nurtured that, and a lot of other producers have really taken that increased the prices they were paying for the grapes that they got, and obviously made it worthwhile for the farmers, and made it worthwhile that they keep these old wines there. And there's just been some amazing wines that have come out. David Sadi, Chris Arlight, and a lot of guys that have really produced some amazing stuff. So yeah, it gives you like a warm fuzzy feeling about that these vineyards are being utilized, and some exceptional wines that have been produced from it.
Wines which we're going to taste in a second. Wines that are made by somebody who's rather good at what he does. So let's jump over to Mark, who's the winemaker, who joins us from, I think, from the cellar. We'll find out in a moment. Mark, welcome. Lovely to have you on the show. Gareth painted the broader picture. How excited then does that make you as a winemaker to have this project to play around with and to explore wines with?
Hi, Dan and Gareth. Good to see you. Good to be on the show again. Thanks for having us on. Yeah, I'm in the office at the moment, so I'd rather be looking at your background there. I'd rather be there with you guys. But a wine cellar is not a bad place to be, especially when you're in Franschhoek. But yeah, I think, Dan, when you look at the Cape of Good Hope range, I suppose that's when things really get exciting from a winemaker point of view. These are not commercial wines. These are wines that have stories to tell. And if you look at the diversity that you find in the Western Cape, in all the regions we have here, Swartland is so different to Overberg, Elgin, Elandskloof. You go to Hermanus, there's something different there as well. So there's so much diversity, and stylistically the wines express themselves so differently depending on where they're growing. So I think also it's kind of been a challenge, that sort of range does challenge you as a winemaker to start saying, well, how can we allow these sites to start expressing themselves as best they can, which often means the winemaker has to sort of step back and try and let the grapes come through in the wine. So they have stories to tell, and it's a pretty exciting range to be involved with.
It's not the first time I've asked this question, but I'll ask it again because there'll be people who perhaps don't know the answer, or they'd like a different perspective, as I certainly would. But the value of old vines, these vines aren't delivering you as many grapes. They are, in many cases, not the most attractive to look at. They're a little withered and battered, much like the host of this show. So why do people like Rosa, people like yourself, prize them so much? Why is there this effort to go out and to sustain these vineyards and to get these grapes in? And what is the reward for you as winemakers, and from there for us as wine drinkers?
Yeah, Dan, I think when I look at an old vine, there's something mystical about it. There really is. I don't look at an old vine just thinking, it looks ugly or scraggly or whatever. It does have its own shape. It's taken over years. And, these vines have often seen droughts and periods of heavy rains, and they've come through all kinds of climatic challenges. And the older they get, their roots are well established. They often farmed in South Africa in dry areas where there's not a lot of rainfall. And so these roots are really well established, and they dig deep. And of course, with time, an old vine in South Africa, we've classified the Old Vine Project, which was started in 2016, classifies anything that's older than 35 years. But, we've got some incredible history in the Cape. And with time, these are vineyards that just start finding their own balance. And I think that's what's key, is the canopies are not too vigorous anymore. You don't get excessive vegetal growth. So the vines are only bearing what they can really look after. And that tends to be really good concentration and well-structured grapes that it starts producing with time. So you get this incredible balance between the acidity and the fruit. And if you look after those vines, really, they are such a pleasure to work with. It's they have incredible character with time.
What sort of demands does that make of you as a winemaker when you're working with these? Is it a lot of extra work? Does it require a different set of skills to be able to take these older grapes and turn them into what you're aiming for?
Yeah, I think it's not just a process anymore. I think you start getting into you have to start looking at the vineyards from trying to understand what the region firstly is giving you. Is it a cool climate? Is it a warmer climate? Are these vineyards stressed? Are they and where's the optimal level of ripeness that you feel you can harness the flavors and the acidity and the balance in the wine? And I think it starts having an effect when you're making decisions about, do you give the grapes oak in the cellar? And I think all our reds there's no more new oak on these reds. With the whites, there's hardly any oak coming through. I'm only getting some about 25% new oak on the Chardonnay from Elandskloof. And then there's a smidgen of oak on the Rubik's River Chenin Blanc. But for the rest, it's all older oak and larger format oak vessels or stainless steel. And a lot of guys are using some cement vessels or clay amphora pots. And that's all just kind of a tendency towards stepping back and not over impacting the flavors and the wines themselves. I think we want those those inherent characteristics that we're harvesting to shine. And we do that by allowing natural fermentations to take place, trying to let the whole process in the cellar, you sort of you act as a midwife looking after the process, but you're not throwing stuff at it that's going to impact its end result. And I think that's just kind of a philosophical view that one starts to develop because you're faced with these incredible sites and incredible vineyards that make you think a bit more than your average wine will.
Before we see how that translates into the wine specifically, what about the public perception of old vines? Because I don't think it was too long ago, or unless you were a proper wine geek, it wasn't something you really knew or understood. I remember visiting Argentina probably 12, 13 years ago and having an old vine conversation, and it wasn't something I was massively familiar with here in South Africa. Beyond just the immediate inner circle of the industry, are people, do you think, in South Africa understanding the value of old vine? Has the old vine project had an impact on the consumer?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think you're 100% right. Until a couple of years ago, people they knew about old vines, but didn't really take it too seriously. I'm saying from a public point. And then basically with the Old Vine Project, Andre and all the guys involved, they have done an amazing job. They put the seal on, which is stating that it's an old wine, which I think is as a marketing retail. People have gone into certain select sort of stores and actually asked, they've seen the sort of little sticker on and they're going, okay, this is the Old Vine Project. They sort of understand it. I think there's still a large amount of time to go. And also people, I think, with seeing that the Old Vine emblem on it, they're also willing to pay a little bit more. And they've done quite extensive studies on that. But I think around the world, they're definitely catching on. Where a lot of from France or Argentina or actually from, in Italy and all these sort of things where old vines are treasured. We're pretty new, I think, really about appreciating these old sort of vines that we have in South Africa. So I think it's definitely on the increase and people are recognizing it. And a lot more people are putting old vines on their actual front label as well to try and actually put like Ken Forrester and those good things. Yeah. So.
It's a really exciting part of our wine development. It gives us another USP to grow from, and it delivers into the wine. So let's start looking at those wines. Let's kick off. The Chardonnay was mentioned a moment ago. So tell me a bit about that Chardonnay.
So yeah, the Chard comes from a little valley called Elandskloof, so very high altitude. And basically, yeah, it's some of the only Chardonnay in the valley. There's some people might know the Bushard from the St. Clements Cut, so it's a similar area. We are slightly higher up on the right-hand side of the valley. And the Chardonnay is around about 20 years old. And what I think is really amazing about the site is it has this really cool climate and quite at high altitude. Naturally, the soils there just give you this amazing sort of acidity, which is like a winemaker's dream, And I think Mark executed extremely well. And the Chard he's making on there is great. We don't use too much new oak. We're using a little bit, and we use a bit of second fill, and then there's a bit of tank ferment, and it's all naturally fermented. And I think it's extremely well done. So yeah, so that's definitely out of the lineup is definitely one of my favorite whites. But yeah, we're quite lucky. We make a white Semillon, Groendrijf or Semillon from right up on the west coast, and then we do Chenin from also the Steersberg, and then Sauvignon Blanc from Elandskloof, so nearby the Chardonnay, and then Chenin and a white blend from the Swartland.
All right, well, we'll talk about those with our winemaker in a moment. Let's go to him with the Chardonnay there. You've already touched on the Chardonnay, Mark, and the fact that the bad old days of drowning out any fruit with lashings of fresh wood are thankfully behind us. It's very much a gentle framework to let the fruit tell the real story. Give us your perspective on this Chardonnay and how you've been able to take this Heimansgat area that I think Krona also used for one of their finer bubbles and give us something that you feel so happy with.
Yeah, I think Chardonnay is probably the one that keeps me awake at night for all the right reasons. It's there are a lot of question marks about Chardonnay, and I think as a winemaker, you've got a lot of influence, I suppose, in the cellar when it comes to how much oak are you giving, what oak are you giving. Are you going to give it malolactic fermentation, for example, which just softens the acidity? But we're dealing with an incredible site there at Elandskloof. As Gareth mentioned, these vineyards are situated, they start around 630 meters above sea level. for the Chardonnay, and goes a bit higher up when you get to the Sauvignon Blancs and some Pinot Noirs up there. But I think the key for me with just getting to know this vineyard has also just been canopy management, and getting to know the sort of the growth and the yield of these vines there. And these are amazing decomposed shale soils, so they're well drained. So the fruit is just pristine. It really is incredible, and it's got this incredible crunchy burst of flavor. And I think one of the key aspects that I've tried to focus on in the recent years is probably just getting the harvest date, getting that picking window right. And my kind of approach to getting that right has been to pick it slightly earlier and trying to capture some of those fresh citrus flavors that we get so naturally there. And of course, when we do harvest these the grapes from Ultima Farm, there you're sitting with an incredible mineral, high level of acid, which is, like Gareth said, a winemaker's dream. You don't have to do anything in the cellar. It's all naturally there. And this is what gives these wines the life, the vibrancy, and the length, and the ability to age as well. And those are key factors in making premium wines. That's not something you can add in a packet. That if you've got it in the grapes, it's just you're dealing with an amazing raw product. So that's the key start, is to capture them at the right stage of ripening. And once you've got that right, I think my approach has just been to sort of do whole bunch pressing, settling it naturally, and then taking it straight into barrel and just leaving it be. And so we're keeping it in the oak, and it's about 25% new oak. So it really is a support structure to the wine, and allowing a little bit of malolactic fermentation, which does soften the acidity a little bit, just so it's not completely searing and racing, just to build a bit of body and mouthfeel, get a bit of creaminess in the Chardonnay going as well. But we're not looking for toasty, oaky characters. We're looking for elegance, we're looking for structure, and we're looking for that creamy mouthfeel that just builds that weight around the acidity and the fruit flavors that we do get there. So we're leaving it in the barrels for around 11, 12 months before we take it out and then put it in the bottle. But it's been an amazing journey of kind of getting to know these vineyards over there. And it takes time. This is just something you've got to try and understand the vineyard site we're working with, and each year you think you can fine tune it and improve in certain areas that you didn't get right last year. So it's a work in progress. It's an amazing journey to be involved with, especially Chardonnay. So it's a good one for us.
With these wines being so site specific, has that changed the way that you work a little in terms of the amount of time you spend in the actual vineyards, getting a sense for terroir, getting a feel for that site, and understanding that the direction that the grapes are going in long before they've actually arrived in your cellar?
Yeah, Dan, it's key. I think you have to, and these vineyards force you to do that, because you've got to get to know them. You've got to understand them. You can't be remote and just wait for them to arrive at the cellar and then do what you think is good for them. And we've got a great relationship. We've got incredible vineyard viticulturists, farm managers who understand these vineyards really well, and the relationship. We've got a great open discussion when it comes to this time of the year, especially, and what we want to try and achieve in the wines. And you can manipulate the vineyards, and just by certain practices, have major effects when it comes to harvest time. So it's key to know the vineyards very well. That really is, it gives you that kind of understanding of what you're working with, that you really need to have to apply yourself to these grapes, for sure.
We're coming to you live from Pinnacle Point at the final of the Vodacom Origins of Golf, where Cape of Good Hope Wines from the Anthony Rupert stable is the official wine partner, which rather handily allows me to taste and celebrate wine that comes from some fairly celebrated areas. Heimansrud, we know from both the Beauchamp Finlayson and from Krona. And then there's a little place called Skierberg, which if you've ever been able to get onto an Evans Sardi allocation, or you've had a look at the very bottom end of a menu where they start getting to 4 and 5 numbers, you'll know that that's a particularly celebrated part of our South African terroir. Tell me a bit about Skierberg and about the wines you've got from there.
Yeah, so we make a Groendrijf for Samuel from a farmer, Henk Lang. Sadly, he passed away this year, and his son's taken over. But amazing old vineyard, which has got these vineyards that are over like 70 years old, and they almost stand up like a tree trunk with hands going out in very sandy soils. And there's one vine planted here, and there's one over there, and whatever, and they're dotted around. I think Samuel is Groendrape being one of the oldest varieties that we've got in there. It's just apt to make that. We're very fortunate. Mark spent some time in the Hunter Valley in Oz, who's also famous for making their Sams there. And he's really mastered it over the couple of years, So I think it's obviously not one of the newer clones, which are quite aromatic and more, I find, more of the dusty and more Sauvignon line. This is really an old school sort of clone. And I think the style that we make is not too heavily oaked. There's amazing fruit. And yeah, it just depends on the year. In 2018, we didn't get any fruit there. And this year, I think it's also 2023 is going to be interesting because I think there's been a bit of short of rain there as well, So, and then the other vineyard is a fantastic farmer called Barcy van Lille, and who've been, since the inception of the project, have been buying grapes from him. And yeah, just such a character, nurses those sort of those wines. And I think what's so special about that area is that their main sources of income were sheep farming or August tea, and their grandfather planted the vineyard, and they just used to collect the grapes and send them to the cooperative. And since guys have really sort of taken it and taken care of the vineyards, the Skrifback is maybe maybe the top Chenin's in South Africa, or definitely maybe the top 5 or 4 or 5 come from that area. And the guys like Jenny at Botanica and what Chris is doing, and Eben, some amazing Chenin. So yeah, tend to agree with you. Eben's making, that was the first 100-pointer last year with Tim Atkin, so from that vineyard. So yeah, it's a very unique and special place.
Which says really then, Mark, if that's where these grapes are coming from, you'll have to do something really bad to get these wines wrong, won't you?
Yeah, no pressure, because you're not dealing with a lot of volume either, Dan. So it does add an extra bit of pressure if something does go wrong in the cellar. There's no second chance for these grapes. But it's an amazing site. I'll never forget when I first arrived there, end of 2013, and saw these vineyards. It's like a lunar landscape in some degree. It's very very remote. You'd never say that you're going to find vineyards up in some of these pockets, and you're dealing with around just over 500 meters above sea level, so it's fairly high, and you get a lovely cool temperatures at night, and in the morning this cooling mist over the vineyards, and then the hot days, of course, so big diurnal shifts with your cool nights and hot days. And these old vines have just stood the test of time. As Gareth was saying, we didn't take anything off there in the dry period, and really got to its sort of peak at the end of 2018 there. We didn't get enough to work with, but I think for the Semillon, we managed to get something right just by really hands-off winemaking. I think stepping back and just doing the bare minimal, but not ignoring them, just looking after them really well, but not interfering too much, if I can put it that way. And I think we've kind of got to a point where we are understanding the Semillon very well now, and these wines have always got a sense of herbaceousness to them as well. There's an intrigue to the aromatic spectrum. It's not there's a complexity and a sort of it's not a upfront fruit that's just going to blow you away. It's not a very aromatically expressive varietal when you're looking at our Semillon, but it's certainly got something fantastic when you look at on the texture, the mouthfeel, and just the life and vibrancy in these wines. They tend to have almost a mineral life and a vibrancy, which is really fantastic. I think essentially it really is trying to be hands-off winemaking and caring from them in that way in the best you can.
So that's a chunk of the white. There are a couple more. We'll talk about the red in a second, but wrap up the other whites for us. What's left in the range and where do those come from?
Yeah, so the Sauvignon up on Millen's Cliff, as I alluded to earlier, and then we've got the Chenin Blanc from Rubik's Review, and the white blend, the Caroline, which is a blend of Chenin, Masson, Roussan, Viognier, and then with the new vintages to come, a variety called Pinnacle Point that we've added in. So I think we're the first people in South Africa to plant it.
It's called what?
Pinnacle Point.
Pinnacle Point.
Yeah. So it's grown in the south of France, and usually grown, you can find it in the UK, as a single variety, but we've actually planted it to try and add some acidity into the blend. And it's been amazing with the first couple of harvests. I've got a small tank made of it. Mark can obviously talk more about the making of it, but yeah, it's a great sort of addition to the blend as well. So that's a really interesting one.
Was this a grape you'd heard of, Mark? Pinnacle Blanc? Was it something that had ever come across your horizon before?
No, so it's grown in the southern part of France, and the name Pinnacle Blanc, the pic refers to the sensation it makes on your tongue because of the high acidity. But I think that's is an important point to make on Pinnacle Blanc, because we're growing it in the Swartland on our Rubik's River farm on the Kastelberg, and of course that's a warmer climate, a drier climate. And when we look at harvesting this fruit, this Pinnacle Blanc coming in at just over 13% alcohol, it's got an incredibly low pH and a very high acidity, which for a warmer region to get those kind of acidities naturally is a wonderful thing to work with in the blend. So it's the first wine was made 2020, and we bottled a little bit of it just to sort of look and learn. I put some in stainless steel tanks and a little bit in older French oak just to see how it reacts to both of those different vessels. Allowed it to go through natural fermentation, and it's really is a delicate but very vibrant, lovely white wine to work with. And as Gareth mentioned, that goes into our Caroline white blend, which is a blend sort of essentially based on the Rhone style whites, with Marsanne and Roussanne and Viognier playing an important role in that blend. But the addition of Pinnacle Blanc is really something handy to have in the cellar, because it adds so much freshness, so much vibrancy, so much life to the wine naturally, just because of its inherent character. So it's a difficult blend to make up, because you can go in different directions and you're not always sure which is the right one. So that's also pretty much a work in progress, a very exciting wine to work with, and we're still working at it.
The Caroline in question here, of course, refers to Caroline Rupert, Johan's eldest daughter. What does she make of the wine, and does it reflect Caroline to you?
I think it does. She's always been a huge fan, and that's why she got to Johan named it after her. And she likes it a lot. So so there's no argument on them. We just got to make sure it's extremely good. No pressure, Mark.
No pressure.
So far, so good. I see Helen Nichol is busy watching from Belfast. Pigpool, a favourite of Philip Dufton, busy watching in Belfast in Northern Ireland, or I suspect is a little cooler than it is here at Pinnacle Point for the Vodacom Origins of Golf final, where we are coming to you live from on a Monday afternoon, where it's dropped a degree or two, though. It's been a little cooler, so we might be moving into red wine territory before the night is out, which is nothing to be worried about, because you've got some pretty good red wine in the lineup as well.
Yeah, we have. So, one of my favorites that we're going to be showing is from Rebex, so the Swartland property. Majority of the red vines that we've got there are Shiraz, different clones at different sites. So the Rebex Syrah is actually a blend of two different sites: the western side of the property, which is all schist sort of soils, and the southern side, on the other side of the property, is all clay based. So it's almost like one of those 1 + 1 = 3. We're going to be showcasing the 2017 tonight. And I just really like about the elegance and the refinement that the guys are doing in the cellar. Not too much oak, and it's amazing sort of spiciness on it that I really, really enjoy. I enjoy Rhone style reds, and the Syrah is definitely one of my favorites. The other red that we've got is the Pinot Noir from Eland's Clove, the 2019, which we'll be tasting tomorrow night. Dan, I know you're quite thirsty, so we've got a magnum for you to taste that. It's always good to taste wines and see how they age out of magnums. But I think the Pinot does extremely well there. We planted in different sort of trellising methods, from Stockway Park or the Eschler, and then some VSP, the posted vine. So so it's really, really exciting. The vineyards are obviously quite young, but Darby, who makes the Pinot, really makes it this amazing, generous sort of fruit and this sort of crunchiness to it. You can always fall into the trap of drinking quite a bit of that.
Let's jump back to the Syrah for a second, and a question on style. It's a regular debate what is South Africa's showcase wine when it comes to red or it comes to white. There's the argument for Pinotage as our own grape. There's the argument for Cabernet Sauvignon, its spiritual South African home that is Stellenbosch, blends thereof. But so many of the international wine writers, people I spoke to, Cape Wine, people I've been reading over the last year or two, have come back to Syrah again and again and again, and not always the style of Shiraz, to use the other side of that grape that we were perhaps better known for in South Africa, making a Gravel Hill style, for instance. It's got that bigger fullness to it, but instead a wine that I think your one really does speak to, which is a lighter, more elegant, more restrained style that throws straight back to the Rhone, and which is clearly working not just for the style you guys want to make, but speaks to the terroir from which it comes.
Yeah, I think South Africa produces Shiraz extremely well. And I think it's one of the varieties that we grow in South Africa that really expresses its terroir extremely well. We have got amazing Syrah and in Franschhoek, Boekenhuis does a great example. We've got our Anthony Rupert Syrah. Holden Mines also do something nice. And then I think you've got to, in the Swartland, Eben's done an amazing job. Ardi and a lot of the Swartland guys are planting and doing well. Kali as well, with the Porcelainbach. So I think it's a variety that grows well. Almost sometimes you feel like it's a weed, it grows so well in these different sort of areas. But you can definitely, as a variety, you can start picking up where it is or try and nailing it down. And I think there's a lot of styles. There are the bigger, richer sort of styles. But I think, a lot of that sort of has been slightly toned down. I'm tasting a lot of Shiraz. And the guys are actually really focusing on it. Unfortunately, as the data goes, Syrah's maybe fourth in the list of reds, or red blends being the most popular, then Merlot, and then Cab, and then Pinotage, and then Syrah. So, but I think you couldn't find a better partner with the delicious steak or something like that. So I think the way of it going forward is guys are specializing in it. They're doing it extremely well. It's really affordable. Some of the sort of entry level sort of wines are and they're great value. So I think that's one of our styles, more refinement and finesse in the wine.
What about style when it comes to you as a winemaker, Mark, with different grapes? Are there some varietals that kind of need that firm hand to tell them where they're going, and others that kind of take you along for the ride and you just kind of watch the grape unfold? And if that is the case, where would Syrah sit on that scale?
Yeah, I think Syrah, it definitely also displays its environment that it's growing in very well. If you think about a Hawke's Bay, cool climate, lots of white pepper, cooler region to grow Shiraz in. It will display a lot more of that white pepper character. Elam, similar. And the moment you get into slightly warmer regions, it starts getting more of that richness, the plumminess. So definitely, it takes you where it wants to go. I think you just got to be aware of what you're working with. But the warmer climates will tend to produce that lovely meaty, sort of savory, but you get more into those red fruit spectrum like plums. It's got a beautiful tannin structure, and it's often a very thin-skinned red varietal that gives you plush tannins. So they're not very grippy. They're very soft and really makes for delicious red wine. So I think one has to just look at where you are growing them, and the grapes will perform accordingly. It's definitely a good expression of its environment for sure.
And then by extension, if we look at the Pinot Noir you're making, the moment you mentioned Pinot Noir in South Africa, everybody, Hemelanada, that's the home. And then Elgin not too far behind. This is a very different part of South Africa. What is it about where this Pinot Noir is coming from that is allowing you to make wine that is hopefully sitting in the same breath as a Hemelanada and an Elgin?
Yeah, well, I think we are a genuine cool climate area. When you're talking Elandskloof, you've got a much slower hang time and ripening period. So to give you an example of the difference between Sauvignon Blanc harvested in Franschhoek is end of January as opposed to middle of March when it comes through to Sauvignon Blanc from Elandskloof. So there's a month and a half difference just in the same varietal being grown in a different area. But similar to our Ultima Sauvignon Blanc and the Syrah Chardonnay, a lot of our Chardonnay Pinot Noir that's grown at Elandskloof is going into our Cap Classique range as well, the Lormans Cap Classique. And often when we taste at the end of harvest time, these wines are, there's no question that they belong in our top tier, just because of that inherent characteristic of high acidity, incredibly expressive fruit flavors, because we get that long hang time and slow ripening development. So when it comes to Pinot Noir, that's what you need. I think a Pinot Noir grown in a very warm climate just will never have the same potential to age, and I think it probably it won't display the fruit intensity and complexity that you need from Pinot Noir, with its structure that can allow it to age, but also with the beautiful, vibrant fruits that we're able to get there at Elandskloof. So again, I think Darby's also managed his oak regime very nicely with the Pinot Noir, just to try and respect the fruit profile that we're getting there, and it's very aromatic, very floral, beautiful red fruits that we're finding on the Pinot Noir grown there. So it's a joy to work with the fruit from there, because it gives you so much. And again, these are wines that you can definitely put down and enjoy 5, 10, 15 years, and you're guaranteed it's going to get better and better with time.
It's a full range then across red and white, not just varietal, but also location. A nasty question for you, but I'll ask it anyway, Mark. What amongst these wines excites you most as a winemaker, perhaps gives you the most challenge, but also the most reward when you finally have it in bottle?
Well, I think I touched on it earlier with the Chardonnay, Dan. I think it's probably the one that it is a difficult one. It's like, which is your favorite child? I think there's no right answer there. But the Chardonnay is the one that really does stimulate me a lot. Of course, just involved with the whites and the rosé. I've never had a go at making a Pinot Noir, and I think that is an ultimate challenge on the reds as well. But yeah, for myself personally, I think I love working with that Ultima Sauvignon Blanc fruit. It's incredible to work with that. And the Semillon for me, it's been an intriguing journey with that wine as well, as is Bar-Sifon. So they've all got their own special place for me. I think my biggest challenge is the Chardonnay. Then I think that's the one varietal that I just feel like we're getting better and better, and we're starting to understand it. We're not quite there yet, I don't think, and that's the challenge that's always in front of me, is to try and capture exactly, to try and make the perfect Chardonnay. I think that's the one that keeps my brain ticking at night. It's a wonderful journey to be involved with this vineyard.
You have that challenge to get it into bottle. Once it's in bottle there, you then have to get people to buy this stuff. What's your challenge at the moment in terms of the market, both South African and internationally, understanding, appreciating, wanting to buy different styles of wine? Where's the hard sell at the moment?
I think, Dan, we've got to talk about our industry, right? South Africa is producing some amazing wines across the spectrum, and it's pretty tough. How do you establish them? How do you earn the trust of the people that every year you are going to release a fantastic wine, and that you can be trusted. So I think it does come with time. We obviously focus on trying to produce consistent sort of quality, and then trying to excel every year. Even if it's a small couple percentages. But I think Cape Wine recently was just great to be there, and I think with a lot of international people there, and people coming to taste and stuff like that, and also being able to sneak around and taste a couple of our competitors, I think it's really good. So I think the general sort of thing is there's great quality out there. I think you've just got to be harder and trying to get the basic liquid onto lips, And I think with Cape of Good Hope being such a relatively new brand, it's really about getting people to try it. And once the guys have tried it, and over the next 2 days, hopefully we've got some disciples also buying a lot of Cape of Good Hope. So that's where my sort of challenge is. But I can assure you they won't be disappointed.
They will not indeed. Before we wrap up, Gareth, just a final one for our winemaker before we let him get back to work in his Franschhoek cellar. Already so many different interesting slices of broader West Coast terroir, Swartland terroir that we are seeing in this range. Is there still stuff to come? Are there new areas for the Cape of Good Wines range to explore, new spaces that you'd like to get your hands dirty in, Mark?
I think stylistically we probably we've been chatting about maybe going into sort of a lighter style red, potentially introducing something like that as well. We've got some incredible old vine Cinsault, Grenache growing in Rubik's River. And then I think also, we're still discovering some incredible areas. If you look at series and what that's doing now, what De Grendel's doing with their Pinot Noir and Chardonnay from up that way. Yeah, I'm pretty sure in 10 years' time we'll be sitting here talking about something we didn't think about right now. And I think our industry is evolving in the right way. We have got some incredibly talented winemakers on this South African landscape of winemaking. And these are guys that are showcasing some incredible wines being produced in areas that we didn't really consider premium 20, 30 years ago. So we are in a very exciting time in our industry, I believe. But yeah, for the Cape of Good Hope, I think watch this space. We've got some lovely ideas. We've got a great team, and there's a lot of energy. So it's a great brand to be involved with, and I think it's really exciting times for us, and I'm looking forward to the next couple of years going ahead.
I think exciting is such a good word. The intersection of fabulous terroir with very gifted winemakers means we've got some lovely reflections of different parts of the Cape. Before we let you go, because we've got some tasting to do this evening, the golfers are up here for the Vodacom Origins Golf Final. You must have done some work yourself, some study there into what combination of wine is going to have the guys shooting 61 off the back tees at Pinnacle Point tomorrow?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be the Rubik Shannon. The 2021 is that shoots the lights out for me. So yeah, that's definitely so hopefully they get stuck into it tonight. So that will make them shoot some decent scores tomorrow.
I know it's a partnership you're very proud of. A quick word from the Anthony Rupert group to all of the golfers going off over the next 2 days in the Vodacom final.
Yeah, I think it's really an honor always been involved in the team. Organizing Carol and obviously Vodacom allowing us to be part of that. So yeah, we wish all the golfers all the best. We have a few of our clients playing as well, which is great for them. So yeah, look forward to the prize giving on Thursday or Wednesday.
So this is the Sunshine Tour down in the Garden Route, professional golf in South Africa, the shining light of professional sport for the country, and it is going to be shining brightly from the Garden Route over the next few days. It'll help from the Anthony Rupert wine brand, in particular the Cape of Good Hope wines. Mark, thank you so much for joining us and taking some time out from the cellar there. We'll have the photos as our next few days unfold, and you're going to have a whole new range of fans over the next couple of days. So look out for an onslaught of sales as a result.
Great, Dan. Thanks for having me on the show. It's been a real pleasure to join you guys today. Thank you.
There we go. Mark van Buren making a lot of that wine with Cape of Good Hope. And Barrel's a joy having you on. If it's not Scotland, it's the Garden Route. I'm sure we're doing it again soon, but enjoy the next few days.
Thanks a lot. Look forward to it.
All right. Well, that wraps us up from Dan Really Likes Wine for the scene. We'll see you back live on Thursday as we build up towards the end of the year and a couple of shows around some of the best wine of 2022. And that is going to be a difficult one to call because there's been so much good stuff to have touched on. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks for joining us wherever you are. We'll see you back live again on Thursday. Goodbye. To join the Pick and Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.